there is something interesting, which is that pilgrimage is not just about what will happen. It's about this infinite possibility of what could happen. You don't know. And that's one of the sort of elements of what makes it a pilgrimage, is that, like if you're home, you're going to go to work from this time to this time. And it's like Monday night is the time to take out the trash. And then you have to like go to the DMV and turn your plates in. You know what the end result, action, and then what is going to happen. And then pilgrimage, one of the things is this infinite potentiality of having no idea what will happen and being open to that space of like infinite.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily spiritual podcast with your host, Raghunath. And we have a special interview day today. With Keli, a.k.a. Kate Reddy. Looking forward to that. But first, this is Saturday, June 21st, 2025, episode 1631. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Interview Day. And Miss Mara, any announcements before we dive into this?
Yeah, there's no show tomorrow, but we'll be back on Monday morning at 7 a.m. And also tomorrow there's Urban Davy via the Bhakti Center. It's an online program, and the topic is contemplative prayer.
Contemplative prayer. Okay, well, I have an announcement, and the announcement has everything to do with the podcast today. We are taking a group on pilgrimage on October 29th. October 29th through November 11th through holy places in India. And that's going to lead us into Keli Lalita, a.k.a. Kate 108, a.k.a. Kate Reddy, a dear friend of mine for many, many years. And welcome to the show, Kate.
Hey, Haribo.
Good for you. Now, some of the hardcore people's ears lit up because Keli was the guitar player for 108. And 108 was a famous Krishna core hardcore band back in the 90s when Shelter was touring. We toured together. She's married to my best friend, Sachi Sutta. It's really great to have you on the show. We're not talking about hardcore, even though she could talk about hardcore for hours. And she's very knowledgeable and very talented and has toured the world doing hardcore. But we're talking about what she does in another part of her life, which is she's doing her doctoral thesis or doctoral dissertation on Westerners going on pilgrimage to India. And a lot of people on the show today have been on pilgrimage, or they had a calling to go to pilgrimage, or they just didn't even know why they ended up going, or thinking, well, I'm into yoga. Maybe I should go to India to figure more about it. So first of all, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. Yeah, I guess because I probably would have been doing something like, I always wanted to get a master's degree, and probably I wasn't really actually planning on doing a PhD, but once I started to do that, I got kind of enthusiastic and really I absolutely love being in school. So I joined the Hare Krishna temple in college, and then I went on tour with 108, and then I got married and I had kids, but like always in the back of my mind was, this idea that I would do something, I would further my education later. I wasn't necessarily planning on going to graduate school when I was 49, but I guess it was just, I was like that meme of the guy like, hey, skater kids, I'm here with my, but actually the graduate school does have a lot of like what they call non-traditional students. So I did my master's thesis, which was a feminist analysis of the power structure of ISKCON, which anyone would like to read.
What was that? That was your
that was my master's paper.
Okay, so this is something different. This is for your.
But this is actually, yeah. So after I completed that, and I was like, okay, that's done. I've analyzed my life and what I went through, and then interviewed a lot of women that are members of ISKCON. I decided that I wanted to do something different and something that was, kind of really what I would have liked to do is do a PhD in religious studies, but I had this practical element of, being older and married and living in Albany. So rather than doing that, I entered the anthropology department. So anthropology is a way that you can study the experience of humanity, essentially. The experience in this of living in a society, living in a social structure. And so you could look at all different things. You could look at power and politics and religion and some anthropology, in case people have no idea what anthropology is. And Sachi actually jokes, he's like, you didn't even know what it was when you applied to the program. And I'm like, I kind of did, but not as well as I do now.
I kind of did.
I sort of knew. I had an idea of what it was, and I knew that I could study religion through that lens. I had that idea. But essentially, like, they do everything from that to looking at like how people eat food. Like, for instance, a little example that I think anyone can relate to is how you eat food can show you how people eventually create a family structure. So like if you wanted to go on a first date, you would say, would you like to get coffee with me?
Right.
And later it turns into getting dinner. So you can see there's like a categorization of how human beings interact. So what I'm doing on this project is looking at this fairly new phenomenon and fairly unprecedented phenomenon of Western people adopting an Eastern religion, an Eastern practice. Maybe they're not fully, involved in they haven't committed to the idea that they're a part of a religion, but there is something about this yoga pilgrimage that's huge. I mean, you do it every year and you have a ton of people, and the experience is something that people want. They long for this. And so I wanted to understand, what is that? Why are people longing to go to India, particularly? Obviously, yoga, has its roots in India. Although if you study it in greater depth, you'll realize that the modern yoga that we practice, modern postural yoga, is very much like a conversation between nations. It's not a purely Indian form. So then the Hare Krishnas come to the West. All these different Indian gurus come to the West, partially because they removed, due to the civil rights movement, what was known as the Asian Exclusionary Act. Do you guys know about that?
I don't.
Asian Exclusionary Act was a...
Kaylee, we're having a really bad echo going on.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Is everybody hearing that?
No, the Zoom didn't hear that. You were muted on Zoom. You were just coming through the Riverside just now.
Okay.
Chicago.
All right. So
We stopped Riverside. Now I think it's okay.
okay.
Out of Riverside?
Yeah.
Okay.
Her echo is
But I will say, Kaylee, you have matched me for how much we can talk. And you and I, microphones, even when we're in a conversation in a room, we're talk machines. So I'm gonna cork you for a second, and I can say that because I love you and I've known you for years. I'm gonna cork you because we just want to share. Like, we're gonna bring some people on, and we're gonna talk to them about their experience and why the heck did they go? And me and Kaylee are gonna interview people, why they're here or not here, but why they go to India. Did they plan on getting something out of it? And if they did they get anything out of it? And do you want to go back, or okay, that was enough, my cup is full? Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm
Those
trying
are basic questions.
I mean, I'm essentially trying to find out, using the lens of anthropology, which has all kinds of, am I still echoing?
The message board says yes,
No, I
but
don't think so.
or maybe that's old messages.
Yeah.
That was a
No,
beep.
you're good. You're
Okay,
good.
scene's good. Echo's gone.
Echo's gone. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Essentially, I want to hear from people because I'm not only looking at what all the previous, there's a whole scholarship on pilgrimage, but I want to hear what people's experience is. And, I do have a few things I'd like to also, briefly share in between those that are quotes about pilgrimage. But yeah,
Well,
so
I have
an hour, so bring them on. Let's hear what they have.
I've got an interesting guy for you first. His name's Brian. And Brian is a Buddhist, a practicing Buddhist. He's a therapist, and he's married to a devotee, also a listen to hers. But he came on pilgrimage. And he sort of, I mean, I was already friends with him because I go down there to Atlanta sometimes and teach. But Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
It's
I
good
don't
to
know.
see
I don't know about interesting. You said I was interesting.
He's
I don't know about
very
that.
interesting. And I would, but when you said you're coming on pilgrimage, I was like, what, why? Now, were you first question, were you dragged on by your loving partner, or did you have some interest? Was it a spiritual quest, or was it just sort of like, I want to check out this place? I'm curious why you went to India.
Well, I mean, I think the interesting thing about spirituality in general is there's something that's kind of pulling us along, or maybe in some cases pushing us along. And I mean, we wouldn't all be here on the podcast if we didn't have that impetus towards spirituality. And I think, I mean, India is fascinating. And I know everybody makes a big deal out of the fact that I'm a Buddhist and I go on this particular pilgrimage, but I think spirituality and our understanding of the sacred in general is like, the metaphor of the blind men and the elephant. I think we don't, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm sure that I don't have an accurate concept of what this whole thing is about, meaning what God is about, what spirituality is about. But there's something that's pulling me, right? And I think, India being kind of that's where the Buddha came from. The Buddha was, is an avatar of Krishna, and is kind of came out of Hinduism, which is sort of a misnomer anyway, Hinduism in general. But how can you not be interested in a spiritual, in an amazing group of people? And the people here really are. I mean, they're beautiful. We're all beautiful, beautiful people that show up. We're all seeking, we're all looking for God. We're all looking for the same things. And I think to have this group going, especially with you, because you've been there so many times, I mean, I can't pass that up. But the other piece of it is, I think any reasons that we give, there's something underneath all that we don't quite understand. It's something that's pulling us that we don't understand, right? We don't understand. I mean, we can give reasons why we went on pilgrimage, but the decision to go on pilgrimage was made before we ever came up with the reasons, probably.
So I want to just say that one of the concepts in anthropology is that we go on pilgrimage because we want to enter a space that's liminal. It's not our daily life. And also the second thing that is talked about a lot is communitas, which is being in a community that's separate from our normal social circle, our normal social status, and also that we have some kind of moment in time and space where we have communion with divinity. And the second thing about pilgrimage that's really important, that's talked about in anthropology, is that you must travel. Travel is part of it. So I'm just wondering for you, because I just went to Nepal and went to all the Buddhist, places and got like I had a deep experience of being at Bodha Stupa. Like I can't exactly describe what it was, but it was like a deep communion with divinity that I've experienced. Like I was pulled into this circle of people circumambulating this, this stupa, and their teachings are within. And it was just like churning this ocean of teachings, and you're like in this wave, you have this experience. So I'm just interested, like, did you have any like mystical experience or a moment that you can think of?
I mean, there are several, and I think like what you were saying, I mean, I think travel in general kind of breaks our frame, right? And it wakes us up. But I think pilgrimage is different, because I think not only does it break our frame, it shows us, especially, I mean, maybe the reason that travel is important is because you see the water that other people swim in, I mean, there's this great talk, I think it's David Foster Wallace on This Is Water, but like this idea that we swim in this water of like our understanding and the way that we respond to things and our whole cultural, and we're not even aware of it, right? I mean, the idea being that we're just in it and we're not aware of it. And I think when you travel, especially on pilgrimage, especially to India, you see that people, they're just living an entirely different life. And I know Raghu has said a lot of times that, they might be materially impoverished, but spiritually wealthy. And I think when you see people like that, it just changes your frame, right? I mean, it changes your framework and changes the water that you swim in. And to answer your question, I mean, I I watch people a lot. I mean, I just, I'm a psychiatrist. I just watch people, and I think the experiences that stick in my mind are like certain experiences where I saw certain people. I mean, I can remember in Vrindavan there was a group of us that were walking down the street, and there was like this wooden fence, and there was this gap in the fence, and we were kind of walking by, and I just sort of glanced over, and there was this guy on the other side of the fence, maybe 15 feet away, and he was just loving his cow. I mean, like literally, like he was like cuddling his cow. Like his face was all up in there. He had this big beard and something on his head, and he was just like loving his cow. And I'm walking with these people, and I go, wait, everybody, come back here, come back here. And we all kind of stepped back, and I was like, look at that, and this guy's just loving on his cow, and it was like the devotion that this guy had, and it wasn't performative. He was behind a fence. He didn't think anybody could see him. And Lori took a great picture. It's like an awesome picture of this guy. I felt kind of like a voyeur watching him, but I mean, that was one case. And then there was like one other that I remember. We were at Sarabi Kund, I guess. Is that where the cave is? Sarabi Kund, where the cave where you go back in the cave. Yeah, I mean, that was amazing, totally amazing. But the part that I remember is when we came out of the cave, we were walking down to the Gunga, and there was this guy that was obviously just living outside, and he was dragging these bags of sand and like pouring them in a pile. And I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, is he making a bed? And we were talking to Mukesh, and I was like, Mukesh, what's he doing? And Mukesh is like, oh, he's making a path for the pilgrims. And I was like, what? And there were all these rocks that were like the size of oranges, like all over the river was like 50 yards away. And then you walked out there and you realized this guy was basically filling this old, basically a grocery bag with sand and like just pouring it and filling the gaps in between the stones. And you could start to see this path forming. And we were just like, what? Like, what is this guy doing? Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like he's making a path, but I mean, talk about bhakti. And we went over and kind of talked to him through the interpreter, and we were trying to give him money and he wouldn't take it. And we just like, it's like your whole head just kind of goes. And wow. I mean, those are the kind of experiences that you hope to have, right? Because it just changes your frame of reference, because you realize that the water that other people are swimming in is just not the same. It's not the same. And I think we have a tendency to believe that like everybody else's experience in a lot of fundamental ways is the same as ours. And until you see that kind of stuff, you don't really realize, one, that your frame can kind of change based on those experiences. And I don't know, I'm talking too much, but
yeah. No.
It's okay. We're all a bunch of talkers here.
Yeah. It's a podcast, so you're supposed to, but there is something interesting, which is that pilgrimage is not just about what will happen. It's about this infinite possibility of what could happen. You don't know. And that's one of the sort of elements of what makes it a pilgrimage, is that, like if you're home, you're going to go to work from this time to this time. And it's like Monday night is the time to take out the trash. And then you have to like go to the DMV and turn your plates in. You know what the end result, action, and then what is going to happen. And then pilgrimage, one of the things is this infinite potentiality of having no idea what will happen and being open to that space of like the infinite.
Sure. And that could be sweet, wonderful, paradigm shifting, heart touching, or it could be like, I've been on some pilgrimages where like a disaster happens and you're like, how do I deal with this? And you're already in this frame of reference, like this is God's mercy, and you're seeing it as God's mercy. That also is like, wow, this can happen, and I can still experience some type of otherworldliness or high from it, or see some hand of God in this, which is almost like we're training for it when we go back in the non-pilgrimage life. We're training, can I see God's hand in everything that's getting dealt? Brian, I'm going to thank you, because we're going to bring a bunch of different people on today, but I really wanted to hear your perspective, and you're very articulate, and I really had a great time with you traveling with us too. I'm glad you came. I've got this other professor here, Professor Snooky, we call her. She's from the Jersey Shore, and so I called her Snooky, and then I got chastised by one of my dear teachers. Says she's a professor, and you're calling her Schnooky? I was like, yeah, I'm not going to call her Professor
I've
Schnooky.
heard about this person.
This
Okay.
Professor Schnooky. You know, Professor. Wait, wait a
Hello.
second. Wait, no. There. Hello, how are you?
I'm great, Prabhu.
Good.
Thank you.
Prabhu, you're Samantha.
Yes,
Okay, I've called you Snooky so long I forgot your real name.
I know. You never know me when I have Samantha on the screen.
So you're going to speak right into that microphone.
Am I doing it?
Professor?
Okay.
Yeah, and you're a professor in. You got to come a little closer so we can get you in the screen.
And maybe get into the cat so we can see your face.
Yeah, get in the
more.
camera here. Wiggle closer. So here's our view.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so you're a professor of Italian, of language.
Yes, I got my PhD in Italian language and literature in 2011.
All right, and pilgrim. You came on pilgrimage in 2023.
2022.
2022. It was a great pilgrimage.
It was
For me. It was a great pilgrimage. How about you?
for me. It was my only, but it was the best.
What were you? You know, you're sort of a yoga, wisdom sages type of girl. What were you thinking about? What were you expecting? What did you want from it? And did you get it? Did it fall flat? Did it? Share a little bit about your experience.
It did not fall flat. It was wonderful. I was into yoga, I guess, my whole life, but it wasn't until I found Bhakti that I truly felt connected and felt like I had a path. And it wasn't, I had always wanted to go to India, but when I met you and Wisdom of the Sages, I just felt very called to go. And what was I expecting? Part of me was expecting like a total immediate transformation. Like I would come home and everyone would be like, ooh, she went to India. She's different.
No one said that.
No one said that. But I think it was a more subtle transformation.
Okay. Kayla.
Well, I'm just interested. So one of the things I don't want to forget to talk about is this sort of universal pilgrimage thing, which is, I guess it's not entirely universal because like the Mecca doesn't have this, but there are sacred places that everyone goes to. And one of the places is a body of water. So we go to the Ganga or we go to the Yamuna or we go to the Radhakund. And I'm just wondering, did you get a chance to bathe on the Ganga or be at the side of the Ganga and how did that feel like anything to you?
Look, yes.
She has on her notes, Gunga, all caps, exclamation point.
Oh, perfect. I couldn't see your notes, I swear.
I think that was the best part for me. Yes. I had heard stories about the Ganga from Raghu, who talked about a floating bloated pig and
That's
really
in my book.
Really gross things, and I was really nervous about it. But
by the way, I saw a bloated floating pig. I actually went to Calcutta to bathe the second time where I saw a bloated floating horse. I kid you not. But continuing on.
Experience.
It was truly wonderful. I really do feel like it changed my karma a little bit, reduced it, and I wish I went in more. Really, I do. I feel like I wish I had gone in every single opportunity I had.
So I'm going to suggest a book that everybody, if you can find it, it's called The River of Love in the Age of Pollution, which was written by David Haberman, which talks about the Yamuna and the relationship of the devotees to sacred rivers now that we're in the postmodern world with things like that. But I also want to, can you see this?
Most people can't. Only the people on Zoom probably could.
I'll just tell you, I'll describe it. This is a picture that a friend of mine took while I also take people on pilgrimage, and we were standing by the place where the Yamuna, or not the Yamuna, where the Alakananda meets the Bhagirati, and it's like the sort of like these four sources of the Ganga, two of them meet at this place above Rishikesh, which maybe you go to.
We're going there this year, Dave Priyana.
And it's this place of like sacred, it's a sacred portal, a place of power, and transformation. And you can see this like muddy river and this very blue river, and they join there and then they flow down onto Rishikesh. And it's also considered to be the exact place where Lord Ram bathes after killing Ravan, because he also has to, he has to bathe because Ravan is a Brahmin, and he has to bathe and remove his karma, and there's a footprint in the rock. And it's like this most sacred special place, and they do Ganga Puja there every night. And for myself, I bathed in that water, holding onto the chains, and the water's rushing over me. And I have like tremendous faith in Krishna. It just kind of came like that. But also I had this like mystical experience of like lifetimes of like bad karmas being stripped away. And I made this like sincere prayer. And I mean, I'm just interested if that was just, like if you don't have 10 years of, living in the ashram and stuff like that, if you still have this, kind of sacred experience of difference before and after the bathing. And you're saying yes. Okay.
100%. And it's funny because this year I went to physical therapy, and my physical therapist was a white little lady from Mumbai. She grew up there, she's British family. And I told her how I went to India, and she said, "What was your favorite part?" And I said, "Bathing in the Ganga." And she was like, "Ugh." She was appalled. She was like, "How could you go in there? It's so dirty and polluted." And it's just so interesting how we can have these different perspectives.
There's usually two extreme sides. Like, that is disgusting, and it was the best moment of my trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. We're in the modern world, so we don't have access to these more. I mean, even when Raghunath and Raghunath went, I think the 1 year before I went to India, and he, by the way, was the person that made me want to go to India. You made me want to go to India.
Right.
Back to the Philly temple, and you were like vibrating on like 1,008 frequencies, and it was like I had always wanted to go to India because my mom was like a semi ashram person when I was a little kid, so I had consciousness and awareness of India, and I had this like pull to go to India my whole life, like since I was like 7 or 8 years old. But when you came home from India that first time, you were like, it was like you had absorbed India, and it was emanating out from you and your descriptions and your enthusiasm. I really didn't know that much about Krishna consciousness then, but I wanted to go to Vrindavan.
And it was a much different India too. It was
a different India. You could still walk down, there were still kind of like grassy places next to the Yamuna, and there wasn't, the very first year, I don't remember any pollution in the streets. And then I remember going like maybe 3 or 4 years later, and there was a lot of plastic pollution. But the first time I went in 1992 or 1992, it was really still very village, and and all of those things. So I think for me it was a cultural attraction to India, and being in a space that was nothing to do with my normal life. But it was definitely the spiritual aspects. I wasn't as familiar with what they even were going to be. So quite a lot of it was like an internal pilgrimage of understanding Krishna consciousness, and also understanding like my reaction to being in such a different culture.
There is something like bathing in the water, almost like bathing your sins, or almost like a rebirth, or this coming of age, like a second initiation, or a name giving, or a changing of bodies.
Right. All of those rituals and all of that, the ritual aspect of pilgrimage they're actually quite universal. So we have baptism, or we have circumambulation. There's something else, which is like a pilgrimage thing, which you may or may not have noticed, but people bring things home from pilgrimages. They want to, and that was very much like part of like there's a pilgrimage in Spain where you had to go to the ocean, and you had to take a shell from the sea. And then when you went home, it was like you had received all this pious credit. Eventually, rich people started to pay other people to go on pilgrimage and get the shell and bring it back, so they wouldn't have to suffer through the travel, which is really an interesting thing. But you see that in Vrindavan. We want to bring something home. We go to Jagannath Puri, we want to bring something home. And that's actually kind of a universal experience of humanity that we have.
But what happened? Now, an interesting thing that you mentioned is you're leaving your circle of friends and leaving your circle of your comfort zone and going with a bunch of people you don't know. And there's something you're mentioning, Kaylee, in going with the group of like-minded pilgrims. Now, did you know people on that pilgrimage?
I had met just a few people
Mhm.
in, I think, New York City when you did a Bhakti immersion at the Bhakti Center. I was still on the fence until I think the day we left.
Wow.
Remember, I was going back and forth about should I go,
That's
should I
right.
not
That's
go, should
right.
I
That's
go, should I
right.
not go, should I go? And I met Jaya Subhadra and Lagima and, you know, old school devotees who gave me some confidence and said, just come, it's fine. Your kids will be fine. Everyone will be fine.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't have done it without the people on the trip. Can I just give a quick shout out to everybody should go to India with Lori Pag as well as
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
these guys because she saved me a few times.
Lori Pag is one of our lieutenants on the trip. She's been to like the India, like,
And is this Brian Kiley's?
yeah.
Brian,
Brian
I'm
was great.
looking at you, and I wrote down 3 times I had major fears, and one was in the last one on our last day was the Bunky Bihari temple, where I held onto you for dear life. We got even the security guards were getting pushed around. I was so scared, but he got me through. So
Well,
thank you for
well,
that.
this is one of those things that, if I say, hey, let's go on a tour of wherever, Spain, Tuscany, it's like, I don't want to go with I personally don't want to go with a group of people. I want to take Mara, go on vacation, or take my kids and go on vacation, or take Mara and my kids, take my family, go on vacation. I don't want to go with like 50 people I don't know, 40 people I don't know. But this is different. There's something about like you're going with these people who are also going out on a limb, leaving their comfort zone, entering into like a place where you don't know necessarily what's happening the next day. And I tell you, Kaylee, I like to make a rough schedule, but don't make the schedule too tight because then once you like schedule every detail, it cheats you from getting the magic that happens in pilgrimage, which oh wow, look what happened today. We weren't expecting this. Look who showed up. Look at this thing. Look at this situation. And there is magic to be happened when we get off of the clock, get off of the schedule, and make a rough idea of where we're going, but not have it written in stone. So for me, I always fly by the seat of my pants. I have to make a little bit of a rough schedule, but other people like, what are we doing at 12:15? What are we doing at 12:18? Some people are
Well,
like that, and they're looking for a schedule like that, and they have to let go of that. So I have to be a little bit more focused. Some people have to be a little let focused. And then I find there is a divine magician behind all of this. Have you had that
yeah,
experience,
because
Kelly?
when you make too much of a schedule, you're actually kind of like you're creating a non-liminal space when you're trying to create a liminal space. And then I think the other thing too is Victor Turner was a very famous anthropologist, and his wife was a very famous anthropologist, and they spoke about and her name was Edith Turner. They spoke about the 4 elements. One is the liminality, one is the communitas, which is the concept of living in this egalitarian, unstructured place where the new social bonds arrive. So this is what he's talking about. And then one of them is this idea of conflict and resolution. So how conflict and resolution kind of arise during this travel, which I think we've all experienced, and that there's this ritual process of conflict resolution. You're with people you don't know. You're in an unstructured social setting. You could go on pilgrimage with your boss, who you normally have to listen to, and instead they're carrying your bags or whatever, just as a simple thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and also the idea that we have these representations in different traditions, which signal to us that we're in a sacred space. So you went to Bunky Bihari. Materially, Bunky Bihari is pretty hard to go to, but spiritually,
Yeah, it's not like you're walking into the Taj Mahal or right. It's like by material standards, it's just sort of like, what the hell is going on here?
and you have to be just open to that space of where you're like in this totally unstructured environment with infinite possibility, and then you're performing these things. You're finding these social bonds, like you held on to somebody. I don't know who it was, except Brian.
Brian.
You're holding on.
Brian.
Yeah, and I think we should, I think this only goes till 9, right? We should maybe ask the
Yeah.
other guests to come on just to hear about their experiences.
Yeah, I'm going to ask.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Thank
Professor
you.
Snook, thank you so much.
you.
Thank
Great
you
to
so
have you back,
much.
and thanks for sharing. I'm going to ask another professor here, Dr. Nancy. Dr. Nancy, how are you, Nancy?
Good, thank you. Thank you so
Na-
much, my obeisances.
Nancy's never missed a podcast, I don't think, in 5 years for the most part.
Few times, but not
But
many.
that's about it. It's you got probably a 99.9% average. And you're a doctor of what?
Environmental chemistry. I'm a chemist.
Oh, you're a chemist.
So
Interesting.
I've done that work for many, many years. So.
Okay. And when was your first pilgrimage?
Hold on. I've got Hodor Baggy Wrinkle needs his treats. Hold on.
Okay.
One,
I understand.
2, and then we'd be quiet. He'll be quiet.
Okay.
Sorry.
So when did you come on pilgrimage? How long ago
I
was
went on pilgrimage in 2018 and 2020 with Gauravani and Rukmini. And then
Yes.
I came with you in 2023. And
Okay.
each pilgrimage was different and incredible.
Nice. And what were you expecting? And did you get what you were expecting? Did you get something else? Was there like a change up, a curveball?
Well, I had been on a journey for a long time about spirituality, and I had been studying the Bhagavad Gita, I think, since 2010.
Mm.
And the Mahabharata, and been doing a lot of reading, but I had gone to a Kirtan and heard Gauravani, and then got interested and let me go with these wonderful people doing Kirtan. So each pilgrimage gave me an experience that was different. And but I think what I came away with was this authenticity and lack of sarcasm available in India. That there was when I first got there, and I think Kate, you mentioned this, when I went in 2018, I was astounded by the filth. The rivers choked with plastic bottles and the dirt and the noise, the corns. And after a day or two, I found that all of that was receding from my consciousness. I wasn't seeing that anymore. Instead, I was seeing the beautiful cows. I was seeing the beautiful people, the smiles, and the acceptance that I felt when I was anywhere I was going. I was just being welcomed by the Indian-bodied people, and wanted to know about me rather than you have to conform to what we believe. It was beautiful.
So your experience that you're describing is more about your relationship to the people that you met, that you saw and met.
Yes.
That
And
was the
in some
primary-
cases, and I had a lot of during the 3 times I had, for example, the first trip, a lot of great pilgrims with me, and I have friends for life with those people that were coming. The second trip, I had a very difficult roommate. It was very interesting. So instead of focusing on the community as much, I was focusing more on the external community, the people that I would run into in different places. And I think that's the most profound experience I had. It was on that second pilgrimage when I went to Tirupati to see Balaji.
Was your experience with Balaji, or was your experience more with the people that were also on pilgrimage going to see Balaji?
I think it was with the actual the temple itself. We had a special darshan, but I remember being online and just looking at the hard stone with the footprints, the path that the pilgrims through however long, millions, thousands of years, coming to see Balaji, the how everything, the hands striking against the walls, the depth of devotion, of people loving, making this journey, that this was so important. And when I went into they opened the doors to the temple and we went towards Balaji, I didn't know, nobody said, oh, by the way, Balaji is enormous. Don't forget to look up. But the minute I walked in, I just started weeping. And by the time I got up to Balaji, I was snot crying. I was not just weeping, I was crying. And then for some reason, I decided to look up, and then I saw Balaji and everything. And as I'm walking out, because I was being very conscious that everybody needs time, as I was walking out, I'm crying and I'm just looking down, just thinking about what I experienced. And a priest grabbed me by the shoulders, spun me around, and said, Balaji wants to see you again.
What?
Yeah. And it was such a moving place for me that he recognized the depth of my connection. And I still don't know what that was. But I felt then that I was directly linked to India in that way. And then going with Raghu was spectacular. Mara, what a spectacular. And there I found walking in the dust of Govardhan Hill to be the experience that I took. Because everybody would say, did you go to Lloyd Bazaar? Did you do this? Did you do that? I said, no. But I walked in the dust where Balaram and Krishna walked. And that's all I needed from
I love hearing you share this. You know, you touch on 2 points, and Kayla, I'd love to hear your thing. Sometimes there are like these weird mystical experiences. I had one, I was with a group of students at Gopeshwar Mahadev, this sacred Shiva temple. And Leela, who was with our group, who speaks Braj Bas, the local language, was like having this back and forth with the priest, and the priest and Leela are calling me over, and they're saying, Lord Shiva wants you to sing to him. I was like, me? What are you talking about? He goes, the deity told the priest that he wants you to chant Hare Krishna for him right now. And so you get these peculiar experiences, and these priests have this relationship with this deity, and somehow you get swept into some otherworldly phenomenon, out of this world experience, and you can't quite put a finger on it. And I think that happens on pilgrimage if you're open to making it happen. And then, oh man, you said some other thing, but now I lost my train
I
of
think
thought.
if they're open to it, you
Oh.
start seeing it in so many different ways. I mean, hearing you singing in what is it? Was it in what's the temple? I'll think of it. But
Udaipur.
in Udaipur, yes. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
and you leading kirtan and the joy of, you know, and there's so many people that were there that are on the screen now. This is what you've created, this commit group, you know, with Braja Sundari and Tom Essick and Martine and Lori and
These guys have gone
Narvika.
multiple times to.
It just such a beautiful thing that it just resonates through my soul.
You know what? This is the point you made. And at Balaji in particular, it takes a long time to see that deity. You have to wait. You have to climb stairs. You have to climb hills. And then the entire time you're thinking, oh, my Lord, oh, my Lord. Now, previously, people would walk to these places from all over India. And nowadays, and so you're actually there before you get there, because you're meditating on Balaji, or you're meditating on walking to Vrindavan. I'm walking to Jagannath Puri. I'm there to see Lord Jagannath. Nowadays, we fly to a place, we show up, we take an Uber or a taxi to the place, and your physical body's there, but your consciousness isn't there. And it takes sort of time to get into it. So we always recommend we've got to prepare ourselves for pilgrimage by reading books on pilgrimage by reading books before we get there, to prepare the consciousness that we're already there months before. So if you're going on pilgrimage, reach out to me, if you're going with me especially, and then we will give you books to read to prepare yourself for that, because you want to be present there. What do you think about that, Keli?
Well, I think that's really good. I think that the more you're kind of prepared for, there's two things. One is you can never totally prepare, because something will happen, like Nancy was describing, that's just absolutely mystical. But there's something there's this Buddhist monk that actually lives in Albany, hilariously enough. So I was talking to him about pilgrimage. His name is Tulku Sherdor, and he was saying, I was telling him about my experience at Bodha Stupa, and he said, there's a reason why that, I think when you're on pilgrimage, why it's so profound and why we should all do it. And you should all go to India 100%. Is because as you're going, and this is sort of what you're describing, the normally when you like walk around Albany or New York City, what's playing in everyone's mind is usually the story of themselves, what they're rejecting and they're accepting and rejecting. They might be like self-flagellating, like, oh, I'm so stupid, oh, I have this to do, that to do. But when you're going on pilgrimage, the mind becomes like this universal mind, and everyone's mind is trained toward biology, or everyone's mind is trained toward this idea that they're in this space of infinite possibility and transformation. So you catch this like Mahaprana experience of change and transformation and openness. And normally, people are judging each other, they're judging themselves, and that mind space is what we're living in all the time in our daily life. But when we get there and you're waking up and you're hearing the names and you're traveling in the bus, even if though we're not walking as far as we used to on pilgrimage, which I love that point that you made about that, there's still this idea that you're turning your mind and your heart over to the process, and that process is sacred. And you're entering this space of divine consciousness before you ever get there. And one can do that through the sadhana of reading, actually, or seeing films or looking at photographs before you go. And also the space of kirtan is a liminal space. So you can do this like mini dip into this, place where you'll be going, where you're just entering the kirtan, and that space is contained by the names and by the sound vibration. So I love that. And I just hope everyone has a chance to, but I guess we have one more guest that we were thinking.
We have one more
about.
guest. So Dr. Nancy, thanks for that
was
insight.
Beautiful, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for that insight and that depth. And we got Bhakti Vinod here, aka Bob. What did we used to call you on the show? What was your nickname?
It was the King of Hearts.
The King of Hearts. We call him the King of Hearts. So get your face right in the picture here. And Bhakti Vinod, when was your first trip to India? You came as a teacher training, but then after that, you came on a little mini pilgrimage we did to Jaipur and Vrindavan, I think.
Yeah, it was Jaipur. It was
Bring that mic
it
right
was
next to your
so it was the
face.
Flower Festival, Jaipur, and then I think we went somewhere else. I can't remember, but we ended up in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Keli, Paramananda brought him to Radhakund, and you had some experience at Radhakund, didn't you? Because he did a teacher training, but you went more as a yoga student with some interest in India.
Yeah, I went as a yoga student with interest to India. I went to the teacher training. My background is I was a lead singer in a punk rock band, toured for a living for a while, and then I got into business. And so, Keli, I think you'll appreciate this. I had a sort of a questionable sense of anything group oriented where people were joining, right? Which is funny because when you're in the punk scene, that's what you're doing. You're joining, right?
Right.
And so when you invited me to go to pilgrimage before I left to go to the teacher training, it was like, well, I'm already out there. I might as well. And I met Paramananda at teacher training. He convinced me to become a vegetarian, which is a whole other story. And then we ended up rooming together on pilgrimage. And so we really broke down and we really spent a lot of time together. And towards one of our last days, Paramananda asked me, we were touring Radhakund and Shamakund, and Paramananda, right at the end of the tour with Mohan Panda, who is this, I guess,
He's like, a Panda is like the priest of a particular temple. In this case, Mohan Panda, we've known since he was a young boy. Now he's probably 50,
right?
And he lives at Radhakund, and he is the priest. So when you go there, you do some particular ritual with him to develop some connection with Radhakund. So you were with Mohan Panda?
Yeah, and Paramananda said, do you want to bathe with me in Radhakund? I said, sure, why not? We're here. I'm not sure if I'm really into all this stuff, but it's interesting. I got good stories to tell as a yoga teacher when I get back. And so we went and found some gumshas. And
Cuffed is like a thin,
like a to wrap around your waist.
Yeah.
So it's like makeshift underwear, I guess, to bathe in. And Mohan Panda took us in, and he wasn't supposed to be there. He was supposed to have to left, and he told us all of these prayers to say. And I knew that Paramananda had been a brahmachari, so I wasn't really listening. And I figured, well, Paramananda will know what to say. He's been a brahmachari. And when on our walking back, I said, Paramananda, you know all the prayers, right? You know what we're supposed to be doing. He's like, no. I'm like, wait. So when we got there, Mohan Panda just happened to be there, and he was there for like 3 minutes, and he saw us, and he said, you know, if you'd come 3 minutes later, I would have left, but you're here now. Let me take you down. And so we bathed in Radhakund and Shamakund, and you know, there's a certain mudra you're supposed to do when you dip yourself in those kunds.
kunds are like big red sandstone inverted pyramids, like with steps that that are filled with spring water, basically.
And it's not the cleanest spring in the world.
It's not, yeah.
And so when you bathe, you know, you hold your nose, right? Sacred ancient Vedic mudra, hold your nose.
Yeah.
And I forgot to, and I had all this backwash come up. And I thought, this is it. This is where I die. I've done 6 weeks in India, and this is where I get typhoid, and I don't make it out. And, you know, Mohan had said, what you want to do is between each bath, each dip, and each kund, you want to prostrate yourself on this tile floor that's in the middle of them, and you want to pray. And you want to keep it very fixed in your mind, what you're praying for. So I'd gone in thinking, these are the 3 things I'm going to pray for. But the minute all that backwash came up, all my mind went to was, I'm going to die. I'm going to get sick. I'm cold. You know, I came out, you're just in underwear, and I'm freezing, I'm shivering. And so Mohan is like, lay down, lay down, lay down. And then he's telling you these prayers that you're supposed to be chanting. So I'm lying prostrate. The tile is really cold. So my body's shivering. My mind is going everywhere other than where I am. And at that moment, I had this experience that, you know, gets talked about a lot if you're a yoga teacher or if you're into yoga at all, which is this concept that you're not the body, you're not the mind. There's something more there. You can actually control your mind if you really work at it. And I always used to think, well, it comes from years of practice and hard work. But at that very moment, for whatever reason, I remember thinking, you know what? Like, I don't care that I'm cold. I'll be warm eventually. And you know what? I don't care what my mind wants. We're doing this thing. This is what we're doing. My mind can go sit in a corner because this is the thing we're doing. And I got very, very present. And I immediately locked onto the things I was praying for. And that was sort of it. And you took 3 dips in each one of them. And for that 5-minute period, I was more present than maybe I've ever been in my life other than the birth of my children. And so after that, we got back and we were staying at a mystic's house, Gajendra. And I was sort of sunning myself in a lawn chair on his front lawn, trying to get warm with Paramananda. Very tired, very, very tired from that experience. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going home in 2 days. What do I do with all this? Am I Hare Krishna now? I'm not a joiner. I don't join stuff, you know? There's a problem when you got to join stuff. Is this a cult, isn't it? And what I realized goes back to something you said earlier, Keli, in this interview. It wasn't like an opting in, because I said to myself logically, why is this something which I've gravitated towards in the 6 or 7 weeks I've been out here? And the reality was, it's not for me, it wasn't adopting something. It was I gravitate towards this because it's logical, because a lot of this are ways that I've lived my life. I've just never really had a container or a name to put on it. And so I thought, well, I'm not joining. I'm just calling something a fact that already sort of exists.
That's actually, you just described what jnana is. The realization that you're not the body mind, and that you're I mean, this is Yoga Sutras in a nutshell. It all happened in 5 minutes. I think that's part of the pilgrimage experience, is like, it's like a game of chutes and ladders. Like all of a sudden you're like all the way at the top because you just got on this ladder. And the ladder is actually and this is not just a Bhakti Yoga thing. It's a pilgrimage study, anthropological pilgrimage study thing. It's grace.
Right.
It's something that happens with no cause in a way. So you just had this like experience. You could have just stayed pissed off that you were cold, but something else happened to you in that moment. And I think that's a very I think that's one of the reasons why we should go on pilgrimage, why India matters so much, because we make an opening for grace, and also we uncover these layers of our non-selves to reveal the self, which is inside and always there, always present. So I mean, the way your description is like that happened to you.
Raghunath Swami once said, grace is something you get that you don't deserve. Right. And I thought about that a lot, to that experience, because that whole maybe 2 weeks that we were on pilgrimage and the 3.5 weeks before that we were in GEV, I basically spent the whole time trying to figure out, what is the angle here? All these people are really happy. I'm not happy, but they want something from me. They must, because that's how this works. And in one respect, I used to think, when I look back on that, I used to think, well, I missed out on a lot. 5 weeks. I spent 5 weeks looking for the angle. But what I've come to realize now is, no, I spent 5 weeks prepping for 5 minutes. You know,
that's a nice way to look at it.
like,
and you did have that magical moment standing face to face with Mohan. You're soaking.
So the epilogue to that story is, and I tell this story to people a lot. I get out. Paramananda and I are dripping wet. I'm shivering. I've had this like intense experience. And Mohan comes up with this. If you've ever seen pictures of him, he's on Instagram.
I know him.
You know him too.
Yes,
you guys
I know
on the show,
Mohan.
if you've never seen him, look him up on Instagram, Mohan Panda. He has this eye cudgel, like this eyeliner. He's got these long fingernails, and he walks up. So remember, I am in a sopping wet underwear, no clothes, dripping wet. He walks up, he gives me this big hug. He cradles the back of my head with his hand, and he says, and I go, Mohan, thank you so much. He says, yes. Come again soon, my dear. This makes no, as Raghunath would say, this makes no material sense. Like, you tell this story to someone at home, they're like, wait,
you're soaking wet.
You're soaking wet in a person with eyeliner is saying, cradling your head, saying, come again. Like, what are you doing?
In the most loving, innocent, caring way ever.
You know.
Keli, you want to wrap this up?
I just want to read. So I went to Yogaville with Krishnadas this year, and I'm trying to just check out all the different ways people experience pilgrimage. So I got this book by Satchidananda Swami, where he took a pilgrimage to Kailash. So there are these really beautiful quotes. One of them is, he says, life itself is a journey toward Godhead, a pilgrimage. So I think I love that, because I feel like we're always, especially those of us that are on the yoga path, we're always in the mode of it being a seeker and a vessel that grace can, just like it says in Bhakti Sutras, just become a vessel, because the grace will fill that vessel. So we have this meditation of just become the vessel, be open to the experience. And anyone listening to the podcast, I would say pilgrimage is life altering. It's something it's like a moment of being, like the Virginia Woolf idea of moment of being. Like you go through your life and you have weeks that go by, but that experience of pilgrimage, it's like crystal clear in the mind. It stays with you in a way that all the other, 50 weeks of the year aren't the same as those 2 weeks. Totally radical, transformational in ways that you don't expect. And everyone's writing these beautiful things. It lasts forever.
It stays forever. That's it. They both wrote that at the exact same time, Martine and Thomas. Thanks, thanks, Keli, for joining us.
Much. I learned so much from everyone today. I appreciated that so much. I'd reach out anytime.
Great, Keli. Congratulations with your PhD. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to all the guests. Thanks to Bhaktivinoda Bob, Dr. Nancy, Dr. Schnooky, and Brian. Thanks so much. And I wish I could interview everyone, because everyone's got a story with this. Also, we are going on pilgrimage October 29th to November 11th. Interested, reach out to me on Instagram or go to my website, raghunath.yoga, and just inquire. Really, really fun show today, and really interesting to hear everybody's perspective. And if you feel like, you know what, I'm not ready for a regular pilgrimage, come up to Super Soul Farm for a weekend. We do this. And insiders info this Wednesday, Raghunath Swami is going to be here for a special evening, and you're invited for the evening. Reach out to us ASAP, because there's There's no show tomorrow. Forgot to say that. And we got retreats coming up here, which are like pilgrimages. Come to see me and Lori Pag. You have a yoga retreat. Bobby is doing a ladies retreat, and Bobby and Cindy are doing a retreat next weekend. Thanks, everybody. It is a beautiful day for a beautiful day. Let the magic continue to flow. Haribo!